Hello and welcome to this community chat with AMHC. I am Bethany Zell of Cary Medical Center. I'm the program director for Healthy You and a public and community relations coordinator. And I'm joined here today by some AMHC friends. I've got Christina Wall and Lorraine Chamberlain. Christina, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about your role at AMHC?
Thank you, Bethany. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. I am the clinical lead for the Adult Crisis Unit in Presque Isle, and I also support our Emergency Services Department with clinical consultation, and I'm a DBT therapist facilitator in our outpatient services.
Wonderful, thank you. And Lorraine, tell us a little bit about what you do at AMHC.
Hi, Bethany. I too thank you for doing this. This is a great opportunity for the community to learn. I am the program director for mental health and substance use. We call it behavioral health and integration, which is working with the person holistically. So I cover a lot of different kind of programs, outpatient, residential, MAT kind of services, children's services for AMHC across Aroostook County.
Wonderful. Well, one of the topics that we're really going to focus today is on the term stigma and what that is and how it applies to the work that you do and the world of mental health as we know it. So maybe Christina, you could start us off on this topic and just maybe tell us a little bit about what stigma is and how you're seeing it relate to the world of mental health.
Thank you, Bethany. Stigma is a thought or a characteristic and messages of stigma come from all different angles. As a community and as a society, in terms of mental health, we have negative ideas about mental health. People who struggle with mental illness we have the idea that maybe they are incapable of living independently or of holding a particular place of employment and careers. We might view them as helpless. We have these thoughts that come from our society. But stigma also can come at us internally, right? We can think ourselves that when we suffer from depression or anxiety, that there's no way to get help. I can't overcome this. I don't know how to get help. So stigma comes at us from all different angles, both externally and internally.
For sure. And I love that you talk about that it comes from us internally. And actually in my conversation with your colleague at the residential treatment facility the other day, she mentioned that some of her clients, there was like a self-worth issue. They felt less than. And that's part of that stigma that is being put on them by our communities and our society, but it's also something that they're fostering within themselves. Lorraine, would you like to add anything to that as far as stigma and how you're seeing it play out in the work that you do?
Yes, thank you. I totally agree with what Christina is communicating about how it's part of our thinking, it's part of our feelings about who we are and about who we think or how we think about others. It's amazing how over time, simple things like language impacts our ability to communicate, but also transmits value and a perspective about a person in a situation. For example, we've worked really hard to avoid the term abuse when we're talking about substances. We prefer to say substance use because any person in our society may use substances. How they use them, when they use them, and how it affects them is different. And so we need to be kind about the fact that some people may develop a chronic health condition based on their substance use and not blame people for developing a problem with their substance use. And so language plays a really good key around. That could be verbally, It could be in writing. It could be even transmitted non-verbally through the way we talk with people in our facial expressions, to maybe we turn our back on someone and choose not to communicate with them because we have an opinion about them associated with a chronic health condition like mental illness or substance use. And so it's really hard sometimes for us to drill down and change all of that at once. Our goal is to help people change that stigma language over time and be kind about influencing. How about we talk about that in a different kind of way?
Yeah, I love that. The language is such a great place to start to look at, you know, what we're doing as individuals and as community members, how we're contributing to these stigma issues that exist. So what are there things beyond the words that we choose that we should be looking for and kind of be deliberate in recognizing and seeking out in ourselves to make sure that we're not contributing to the problem? What do you think, Lorraine?
I think that internal processing about how we act, what we say is really important. And sometimes we call it mindfulness. Now, that's a term that's being well distributed in our community. So how am I treating this person? Am I mindful about what I'm saying? And do I come across as judgmental? If that question is answered as, ooh, yeah, I think I might be coming across as a little judgmental, there's our opportunity for change.
For sure. Do you see anything different or that you could add to that, Christina?
I agree with Lorraine. I think that's one part. I think another part too is being aware, or as Lorraine says, mindful of attitudes of contributing to that thought of helplessness. Are we trying to fix it for them? Do we try to, are we coming across in a way well-intended, but perhaps minimalizing it because we're providing simple answers, or I believe in you, I just know. Yes, we all need that cheerleader. We all need that support of people who are supporting us and being there for us. But on the same hand, if we make it sound too simple, we are we're minimizing what a person who's struggling with mental health is going through.
I think there's also a component too where we almost enable them to stay stuck in that stigma by kind of taking them out of the equation of getting the help that they need, where we're kind of protecting them and doing so much for them to keep them safe that it perpetuates that stigma that they're incapable of doing it themselves. And I know when people are dealing with mental health issues that there are components that they can't handle on their own, but they should feel equipped to get what they need to make those things happen, as opposed to, you know, the people who are doing it well-intentionally, protecting and trying to, you know, facilitate every step of their lives. I think in looking back, I could see where I've probably portrayed that stigma to people outside of the situation where I thought I was helping, but actually making it appear that that person was incapable of helping themselves. So
that's true, Bethany. I think another part of this is, and it's so hard to do, right, is the aspect and the gift of sitting with someone and listening. Asking a simple question of, tell me what it feels like to you. And being willing to just sit with them and listen.
And being,
that is a hard thing to do, and yet a tremendous gift that we can offer.
Yeah, and not just that fix it mentality, because we can't fix people, you know, and we can help them move forward and heal and possibly find remission or recovery from whatever it is that they're dealing with, but we can't fix people. And so as much as we can, we should be helping in the healing process with our words and our thoughts and how we direct those conversations. And I love that, sitting and listening and being there point that you brought up, Christina. I think if we had a lot more of that, I think people would be much more willing to come forward and ask for the help that they need. If we had less people like me out there trying to fix it and more people that were just willing to be there by them, supporting quietly and listening and asking what they need. Aside from all the fixers in the world who are trying to be pushy, why else do we think that it might be difficult for people to ask for the help that they need, considering some of the stigmas that we're talking about? Christina, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think there's the attitudes that we're exploring and talking about today, and then there's the practical things. People don't know where to go and where to ask for help. Thank you again for inviting us today, because we're making it visible. We are here. You know, how to call us, how to contact us, how to get help. So I think that's a piece. I think in a rural community, transportation is very difficult. Once you find out where you can go, how am I going to get there? We hear that every day. So I think there's barriers to getting the help, in addition to the attitudes that we have about it. Shame, I'm embarrassed. Can they really help me? Those kinds of questions that we ask when we're struggling. Well, if I can get across those barriers, then where do I go? And how do I get there? And who do I ask? And those kind of barriers to getting the help we need pose a problem.
And I think in the small communities that we're living in, I think there's even some of that might prevent people from coming forward and asking for help, because they worry, you know, what if they know you, Christina, and, you know, what are you going to think? And is my information safe with you? Lorraine, do you have any other thoughts on why it might be difficult for people to reach out?
Well, I do, and that is, I think, about our culture. Who are we as people? I think our traditional culture, especially in Maine and certainly Aroostook County, is we're capable, we're competent, we're giving, we're kind. Mm-hmm. And most of all, we can take care of ourselves. With that mindset, we're at risk of not asking for help when we need it. And thus, I think, feel maybe even guilty, or back to what Christina was saying, shameful, about, oh, there must be something really wrong for me if I need help. I think we're starting to change that over time, but it takes some time. And I think when people tell family and friends that I'm reaching out for help, one of the responses could be, I'm so glad. I'm really proud of you. Good for you for taking that on and taking care of yourself. I'm not sure that people hear that. I sense that people sometimes think, oh, I didn't realize that you were struggling. Oh, I didn't know that you needed that. And again, that reaction says what? Something wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't ask for help. And that for me is key to stigma.
It is.
Because if I had I'll use something pretty dramatic, a broken arm, no one would say to me, oh my goodness, Lorraine, why did you go to the ED? They wouldn't say that to me. They'd say, how come you didn't get there faster? So it's really important to say the same thing for mental health and substance use, is how come you didn't get there faster? Because it's so important to get there soon. If we could actually focus on those first signs and symptoms that people are having and getting the right help at the right time, I wonder what it would really look like for us today. Would our health with mental health and substance use be so chronic and so devastating because people ask for help sooner? I just wonder about that.
It's true. And I hope we get to the point where our communities just automatically provide support instead of that shame or the feeling of you're not one of us or there's something wrong with you. I think it's important that we speak into that and keep speaking into that regularly, because especially as the pandemic has gone on and people are continuing to isolate for long periods of time, which we know scientifically that that's terrible for mental health and substance use disorder outcomes. And so are there things that we can do to work together to kind of help to rectify some of the barriers that people are facing when they're struggling with any of these mental health issues? Christina, what do you think? What are some things we could do?
I think open conversations like this one are critical. Being willing to be open, and we start and practice in safe places, right? As individuals, when it's a time when we're struggling with mental health, because again, it's not about them and us, it's about all of us. Lorraine and I have often talked about the idea that everybody talks about we all have medical health. Sometimes our medical health is strong and we're okay, and we can get our once a year physical and we're good to go again for another year. And other times we go quite a bit to our doctor because it's a year where we're really struggling in our medical health. At the same time, we all have mental health, and sometimes we're struggling with mental illness, but and other times our mental health is strong. So just having these conversations about that concept and changing our societal perspectives and views is really critical. Trainings are important. I think sometimes people think, oh, it's just semantics when a big organization like ourselves comes out with a change in the titles of our programs, substance use. But as we've already alluded to, language is critical because our language and attitudes influence our responses.
For sure. And I love that you brought up trainings. We've actually had so much more access, I think, as a result of the pandemic to some of these trainings that might have been inaccessible for us in normal circumstances. I actually just attended one last week about suicide prevention, and it was fascinating and very helpful and very practical, and some things that I took away that I could put in place right away. So I love that our communities are stepping up to provide those kinds of opportunities for us to continue learning ways that we can help with these barriers. Lorraine, would you have anything to add?
I think everything that Christine said is so spot on, and as well as you, Bethany. I think getting more information for ourselves and feeding our own awareness is key. I also think, just like what you said, Bethany, in this training, it was some simple things that you weren't really quite aware of. And once people pointed out, you go, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the examples I have is school systems using this terminology around abuse potentially, and or bullying, and or maybe even suicidal thoughts. And that is see something, say something. That's true in everyday life. So if I have a friend, I have a family member, I have a neighbor, I have someone who I see at the grocery store, it's really hard with masks on today, but I maybe have a Zoom meeting with, or I am talking with on the phone, that if I see something, that I say something. And the saying would be, how can I help? Do you need to talk with somebody else about that? That seems really important. Those kinds of reflections help people feel reassured that getting the kind of help they need for mental health and substance use is critically important, and to not shy away from it. There's nothing wrong with needing it. Everyone at some point in their life may need it. We're all in that together in that way. And it crosses all of the socioeconomic, cultural lines. This is where humanity just sort of walks through and says, oh yeah, this impacts me too. So just be thinking about those kinds of things, and again, being mindful about how I as a person can support someone else. That's a great start.
That's awesome. And I think as much as we can, maintaining these connections, with people that we know or have an idea might be struggling. And it goes back to even the mindfulness and awareness that you brought up earlier, Lorraine, being aware of what's happening around us. We've all been kind of physically distancing, but keeping those connections viable and reaching out to the people that we know who are struggling in many different ways. And, I've always encouraged all of the Healthy You followers, smile, be friendly, engage everyone you see. You don't know if you're the only person that person will encounter in that day. And so, some people are starving for conversation. Some people are just starving for just catching someone's eye and being seen. And so as much as we can do that in our communities, I think that helps to break down some of those barriers for sure, just fostering those relationships and keeping those connections open and establishing yourself as a safe place for people to turn if they need to. So is there anything else either of you would love to add to this?
I certainly would like to say again, Bethany, thank you for doing this. I hope people found this to be helpful. And I will add, if you want more, contact Bethany so she can arrange more.
I would agree. Thank you so much for just offering this to us and to the community, Bethany. Conversations like this are so critical for us to be able to start breaking down those barriers and letting people know it's okay to talk about it.
For sure. And we'll definitely post the links with this video of how you can get in touch with Lorraine or Christina and some of those emergent numbers that you might need if you are in a place where you find yourself needing some help. Don't be afraid. You're not alone. And there are people out there in our communities ready and waiting to help. And we don't want you to wait any longer. Please get the help you need if you need it today. Thank you, ladies, for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Bethany.
you.